In the UK, the company has been very successful through the British utilities, who have supporting legislation and grants that are available for individual consumers to be able to use equipment like green energy options. In Scandinavia, the company has where some of the states certainly have rolled out smart meters. Not yet in Norway, but that is coming, although it might be a year or two yet. There is legislation in place for that to be rolled out and to support the use of in-home displays. Again, the marketing is being done by utilities and partners. In Germany, where the company did a lot of research, that highlighted that they should open up their own office and staff it with German nationals for the reasons that we've heard about earlier on. And currently, the company has 5 pilots working with Stadtwerke. In the Middle East and Australia, utility pilots are going to be followed up by partnerships, local partnerships. But it's anticipated, and those partners that are being talked to at the moment are aware of the fact that it's anticipated that there could well be offices in the future. Significantly, the company has made use of government's support. And the apostrophe isn't the right place there, because I don't mean just the British government, but the governments of the markets where where green energy options have been looking to develop, particularly in the likes of Germany, where they were able to access assistance, practical help from government authorities, nationally and locally, in terms of where they ought to set up their business. A case study that Rachel put together involves Portugal in terms of how things can happen and how you have to be flexible. I think it's fair to say that at the time that this all happened, that Portugal wasn't quite on green energy options radar. And then during the Sustainability Live exhibition in Birmingham about 18 months ago, Rachel had a meeting with UKTI's overseas commercial officer in Portugal, who is responsible for energy issues. Consequently, green energy options was introduced to the Portuguese utility, EDP, which has led to a trial in the Évora smart city concept that has been developed to the east of Lisbon. You may or may not be aware of the fact that the Crown Prince in the United Kingdom, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, is very much an environmentalist. And he visited Évora to represent UK involvement in that programme and to promote exports. Consequently, Green Energy Options, because they were involved, had an opportunity to present their products. There was an evening reception at the British Ambassador's residence in Lisbon, and there were UKTI Exports Awards. As a result, while I think it's right to say that no business has resulted from it yet, but undoubtedly it will do. Green Energy Options are working with the local utility regulator in Lisbon. In other words, they're influencing policy and strategy in that country in terms of demonstrating the significance of the kind of equipment that is available from Green Energy Options and others for that matter. A quick word on how Green Energy Options has been able to apply support that certainly is available in the UK, might be available in other countries as well from other countries' governments. In the USA, there was a market research visit which was facilitated by UKTI, and that in itself helped to focus Green Energy Options minds on the fact that they should be exporting initially to Europe rather than the US. In Germany, there was an independent research project commissioned, again assisted by UKTI's staff in Berlin. That has resulted in an office opening in Berlin earlier this year, and there are 3 staff, with more planned as the business develops. A market research trip to Australia and New Zealand is another element that was supported by UKTI that enabled green energy options to meet potential partners and identify opportunities. And significantly, that has already resulted in 2 pilots with utilities down under, which has currently invoiced more than €325,000. And when you think that's on top of the million that I mentioned earlier, or the €1.2 million that I mentioned earlier on, that is quite significant and a pretty good return for one visit to the Australasian continent. So, summarising, in terms of the process associated with your internationalization strategy, plan, check and amend. Be flexible. Remember who your audience is and adapt it to suit. Just a small point in terms of multilingual markets, you should always check your spellings with a native speaker. The lose of energy is actually the wording that was used in a poster during the exhibition that was aligned with the climate change conference in Copenhagen a couple of years ago. It was actually printed against a picture of a window with energy, with electricity basically sort of wafting out of the window. And instead of loose off, it actually meant loss of. So it's worth getting those little points just right. Research the local customs and respect cultural differences. What suits in one market won't suit in another. And you'll see in the middle of the left-hand side there a logo with CO2 and a footprint, which is something that was being considered in the context of delivering this message to all the nations who will be visiting London next year for the Olympics. It was pointed out that that won't work, because there are a number of nations, notably Thailand, who would find it offensive to see a bare foot associated with a logo. I didn't know that until recently. I wonder whether you did. But there are sort of millions of almost of examples of how we can literally put our foot in it in that respect. Refresh your research on a regular basis. Just because we have a research report from a few years ago doesn't mean that the trends and attitudes still apply, and I would suggest particularly in this industry that is so fast moving. Don't impose your own country's values on those that you wish to work with overseas. Adapt your message and adapt your behaviour accordingly. Visit the countries and meet the people. It's absolutely true, in spite of the fact that we are doing this over a webinar, but the most effective way to do business with each other is by meeting people, being able to look them in the eye and shake their hand. Be aware of the time differences and cultures. It might be a good idea from our point of view to telephone someone towards the end of the day, which in the UK might be 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. But I'm sure you wouldn't be too pleased to hear from us necessarily in Finland, where you're a couple of hours ahead of us and you're about to sit down to dinner. So we have to be aware of these things. Ensure our customer service is professional and always creates the right impression. We always do our best. I would suggest everyone can always do a little bit better. And if you're not sure how to reach your objectives in a particular market, ask for help. The people that you ask will be flattered that you thought sufficiently of them to ask their opinion. People like it when you ask them questions. And finally, have fun. Work should be fun, and a smile and a thank you goes a long way. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the voting from the United Kingdom, I think, certainly in terms of green energy options. Thank you for listening. And if you do have any questions, can I suggest that it might be more effective if you were to address them to Rachel at greenenergyoptions.co.uk.